this.
All right, making his debut appearance on the Insufferable Bastards podcast, it's Karl from WATP. Welcome to the broadcast, Karl Hamburger.
Thank you for having me, Carlos and OJ. Good to see you both. I have to tell you, this is a busy morning for me. I had to rip myself away from Vince Russo on the BS show, talking about whether they should strike Sterling John's channel or not, because they have the power. They wield the power in order to get John his second strike if they want to.
Jeez. And I guess we're recording this for our listeners. It is, or our viewers on Facebook. I'm recording it in advance because I'm nervous talking to the mayor of the Dabbleverse, according to Kevin
OJ's
Brennan.
not the mayor.
And a floating anus. So you throw that in there with all the chat, I would be a wreck. But yeah, so we're recording this in advance, and this will actually appear after. I guess you got Dabble Point. Is that, did I just butcher the name?
Nope, you got it right. Point Dabble Point every Friday at 4 p.m. It rotates what channel it's on. This week it's on WATP.
Oh, nice. So my first question, and I don't know, so I'm going to do a live stream at 7 p.m. and then this will play during that live stream, which is stupid, I guess. But how has YouTube changed the approach you have to WATP, if at all? Because it used to be everything was audio only, right? And now we all got, do I have to wear makeup at some point? I hate this shit.
It's changed it tremendously. I have a freaking ring light in my basement now. I never used to give a shit about the lighting down here. And now I have to make sure that you can see everyone. Yeah, when I started doing WATP, I'm a fan of radio. I liked morning radio. I liked afternoon drive, sports talk, politics. I listened to all that shit. So I started WATP because I was just a fanboy of that sort of thing. That's why you hear the song parodies and the drops and the jingles and everything else. So I used to do it. I have the pool table here that's very famous for its green felt. Yes. And then over here is my bar. And so I just plopped my laptop up on my bar. I had a USB Yeti microphone. And if somebody came over to do the show with me, they would also be talking to the same microphone. And we'd just be standing around my bar doing a show. And I believe it was many years ago, but Vinny Paulino took a photo of my setup, or I think he was taking a video while I went to go take a leak, took a video of my setup and tweeted it out to embarrass me to everyone because it was a shitty setup. Well, fast forward, now, obviously I have all the fan art on the walls. We have the live show posters and all the different fun things people have made for us over the years. It's turned into a whole studio. And I have the different cameras in here, the different angles for when guests come in. It's completely different now. There's a visual element. And I was reluctant to get into that. At first, my thought was, all right, I'll put a webcam on. In fact, I think the first time we ever did a live stream of our show was when Shuli was over for the first time. And I put like one of my extra laptops up on a bookshelf that I brought downstairs and just kind of like so you could see the whole studio kind of thing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought maybe I'll just put that out there for people who support us on Patreon. And if you support us, you can watch us do the show live. It'll just be for those people. So maybe a couple thousand people will see it. And then, you fast forward. Thank God I got into YouTube when I did. I thought it was just going to be kind of a marketing tool to get people to discover who are these podcasts. And now it's turned into one of our main channels.
Can you even, if you're starting a podcast now, and this is probably inside baseball, but fuck it. But if you're starting a podcast, can you even do audio only at this point? Do you have to be on YouTube? And is it, in terms of your revenue, is YouTube as important now as the things you were doing before, as Patreon? Is it catching up?
It's catching up. It's definitely not as important as Patreon and other things that I do. But I don't know how you start an audio only podcast in this day and age. There's a few that I still listen to, No Agenda being one of them, which is very much just audio only. And I'm still a podcast fan. I still like audio only entertainment because I like to multitask. I'm not sitting around staring at my screen all day. It's hard to do that. I try to keep up on what's going on. But yeah, I don't know how you would even start an audio only podcast. In fact, I've even seen guys like Mark Maron reluctantly get into YouTube, and he's doing what I used to do, which is just a still image with the audio just to have a YouTube video. So I used to create these horrible thumbnails that would show, hey, Anthony Cumia is on the show, and it's me and Ant beating up on Opie, and now, I put that out. And it got tons of views, but you can't get away with that shit now. People want to see the people who are talking for some reason, even though it makes no difference.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. People will be pissed right now because it's previously recorded. That'll be every chat. So it's much tougher. And the people bitch about production value. I'm a dude in my basement. This is a hobby, God damn it.
The customer is always wrong, Carlos. Remember that. But the other thing too, though, I should mention is, like the roundtable that we're doing weekly. This is our 3rd episode coming up today. That is very much just a discussion. We're not playing clips. We're not showing things. There's become a lot of visual elements. I mean, the Shuli network does this very well with their producers, where a lot of the gags are sight gags. And a lot of the times when we're watching Stuttering John clips and stuff, it's the drool that's coming out of his mouth or the snot running down his nose or whatever that's kind of the joke. So a lot of times, and I try my best to explain what's happening if we're laughing at something that we're watching, because I want it to be audio first, but it is easier to goof on John when there's a visual element, or any podcast that we're reviewing.
Yeah.
More and more of these podcasts have a visual element, and I'm pulling video clips and reviewing that instead of just the audio.
And how about you talked about like the early days there, and this is the theory I want you to react to. I have this theory that the latest generation of dabblers, right? There's been new people on the scene. My theory is that they're more interested, or their priority is to sort of make money. It's more about profit now than it was like when, say, I think Cardiff and El Horrible started to do what they did just because they were compelled to do it, right? Correct. Not to say it was passionate, but it was. And now you have guys like, and I don't mean to throw stones, but like Joey C has inserted himself in there. And he's
first person I thought of when you said that. Yes.
He's very much building an army. Hackride, who I like Hackride. I don't know if he likes me, but he went from being like a blind Mike guy to being Joey C's guy to now being now he's in the Dabbleverse, and now he's going into business with Bob Levy, I guess. And I'm wondering, does that affect the quantity or the quality of the podcast that we're seeing? Is the Dabbleverse now about making money for everybody because of two?
It is. Yeah, no, it is for some people for sure. And I've actually been pulled in on panels about, everyone wants to know, how do you monetize your podcast? How do you start a podcast and make money doing that? I know people have written books about it. There is this podcast magazine that came out of a radio journal, and they brought me in to interview me about how to make money podcasting. And the thing I always say is, don't go into podcasting to make money. A very, very small percentage of podcasters make any type of money podcasting. You can make maybe a few bucks. And by the way, you're in the top 2%, maybe top 1% if you're making any money podcasting. So kudos to you if you're making $100 or $500 a month. But $27, whatever it is, like at least that makes it so that you're better than the hundreds of thousands of podcasters, if not millions, that have zero audience.
I read one time that, like, if you on audio only, they were saying if you get 100 downloads, you're in like the top 1% of all podcasts, because there's so many dead podcasts out there too. There's podcasts they take that,
factor that in.
The other thing,
never get into podcasting to make money. It's the wrong angle to do it, because I did this as a hobby. I play guitar, as you guys probably know. I talk about it in bands and stuff, and I've always done that as a hobby. I never thought I was going to become a multi-millionaire, playing surf music, playing instrumental rock music. So that's for fun. I got into podcasting for fun. I never thought we'd make a dime. I was reluctant to start a Patreon. People in our Discord were like, Carl, if you start a Patreon, I will donate. I want to donate to your Patreon. Fine. I'm like, all right, you guys keep telling me this. I'll start a Patreon. And
so it felt dirty at first. You felt a little.
Well, it felt a little weird, because I was doing this as a hobby. I owned a business at the time. I didn't need money, and people kept telling me that. And then, and really, that's the advice I'd give for young podcasters. Wait until there's a demand, because otherwise it's embarrassing. There's these local guys. I won't mention their names, but there was this local podcast here who
in Rochester,
that no one listened to. And a couple of the guys came on my show in the early days, but no one listened to their show. And they started a Patreon. And I looked one day, they had one patron on their Patreon. And I go, Vinny, because he knows those guys too. I go, Vinny.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was Vinny's podcast.
Well, no, I go, Vinny, can you believe these guys? They have one Patreon. He goes, yeah, that's me. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's fucking funny. I'm like, don't start a Patreon until you have an audience of people actually want to get bonus content or just support you because they appreciate what you do.
How about switching gears? Yesterday, I guess in terms of news, Chad Zumock goes on MLC. It's Chad versus the sorcerer, essentially. That's what Kevin Brennan calls the therapist. I know you had a show yesterday, so I don't know. Did you see any of Chad with the therapist, and what was your impression?
So Mike had to do Who Are These Socials an hour early. We usually do 6 p.m. We had to do 5 p.m. because he was going to see Dave Chappelle at the Garden last night. So I was torn because here I am trying to prep for who are these socials. And I'm looking, I got obviously BS is on there and John's trying to snipe BS. And then you had MLC and NLO is sniping MLC. And then John sniping NLO, sniping MLC. So I tried to tune in for a second, but I did not have time. What was the takeaway from that episode?
I mean, I loved it. I guess I'm a weirdo. I feel like I'm alienating myself from the Dabbleverse every week, but I love Brennan. I love Misery Loves Company. I mean, it was fascinating to me because it started to make me think like, why do I watch these podcasts? What does it say about me? What would this therapist say? Why am I so invested in Chad Zumock? And, there was a lot of stuff. Basically, it came down to, and I think I'm going to do a separate episode. Chad, I mean, at one point, 4 years old, according to him, assuming he's telling the truth, was stuck in a room with his dead grandfather, with the corpse of his grandfather for an hour. And then wow, I'm Dr. John. But it all stems from trauma, according to the therapist. Essentially, everything in his life and the way he reacts to things and the way he overreacts to things all come from that childhood trauma. I would say listen to the episode. I mean, whether you hate Chad, love Chad.
Well, there's
Kevin,
no way
it's
to
compelling.
because Kevin takes them down, so there's no way to do that. So.
Patreon. You'd have to go to Patreon.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend a lot I'm going
to give Kevin Brennan money after all the shit he's talked about me. Okay. That sounds like a good plan.
But do you have a begrudging respect for Brennan, or is at this point he said he's talked too much shit? Because I know you have said many times you think he's funny.
He is funny. I don't care if people talk about me. I don't take it personally. I put myself out there, so I deserve everything that I get for that.
No mask for you.
My thing with Kevin Brennan is his show is just not what it used to be. And I know that his show has gone through a lot of ups and downs and different progressions and different co-hosts and things like that. But you got to admit, Carlos, and
don't turn it on me. Don't turn it on me.
No offense to you. I know you've been a frequent guest. But the quality of guests he's going to have that show has declined quite a bit in the past couple of months because he's just pissing everyone off. And it's a weird thing to do. It's this, I think Kevin, and maybe they talked about it. I think I tuned in for a second. They were talking about it on the show where Kevin might have the same kind of thing that Chad does, where he thinks that people aren't going to like him. So he's like, fuck you. I don't like you first. He wants to get out in front of it.
There was a line where he talks about, this is going to fuck me somehow. I'm going to get stabbed in the back, so I'll screw it first. And I thought that was fascinating. But that's part of the reason. That's the exact reason why I watch Kevin Brennan all the time. I think there's something to be said. If you've ever gotten passed over for a job at work, or you're not as successful as you think you should be, and you see somebody like Obnoxious John making millions with Tukey, you start to get jealous, right? There's that human part of yourself that starts to get jealous, maybe.
Or if you see Obnoxious John hanging out in your green room uninvited, you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Right?
Uh-oh.
Wow.
Let's pause and address this.
I'm kidding with you. It was cool hanging out with you in Detroit, buddy.
Yeah, that all caught me all off guard after I heard that you
OJ sent me an apology. I'm like, nah, I'm just busting your balls.
Didn't think he was kidding. OJ,
I definitely didn't think he was kidding. It made me look like or the way it sounded to me, the way I took it, like I was some lowlife, just like a hanger-on, just creeping up in the back and eating all their pizza and taking advantage of it. No, I felt horrible actually that I found out.
You're fine.
I was like, I'm
sorry I brought it up again. I didn't realize you were this upset.
They put me on the poster. I was like, I thought it was cool.
Okay. So now I gotta bring up this story. Ray DeVito comes over to our merch table. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten professional posters printed. They're not cheap. I spent over $1,000 on these posters, and they're for people who buy VIP. And if you want to purchase a poster, I think they were $20 to buy a poster. Ray DeVito comes up to the merch table to my wife and goes, hey, can I get one of these posters? Because, I'm on it. And my wife's just like, well, we'll find out. I got to, we're going to sell them first. If we have some left over, I'll talk to Carl. Yeah, but I'm on it. So can I get it? You know how many people are on this fucking poster? Everyone's on this poster.
True. That is true.
Well, no offense to you, OJ. I mean, you deserve your spot.
No, and I knew you were annoyed that like the pizza and just all the people that were back there. And it was just, I get it.
When in doubt, blame Ray DeVito. That's what it all comes to. Deflect to Ray.
I was annoyed, not with you at all, because you were back there before the show. We were all hanging out. You were shooting photos and video and capturing the moment. And we had Cardiff getting into character and Tukey back there and everything. So that was fine. I was annoyed for real when I got done with the show and I went backstage and there's a bunch of people who have nothing to do with WATP all hanging out back there that I do not know. Right. And I walked back there to get a beverage and a slice of pizza. And there's a guy back there just holding court, won't shut up. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is no longer my green room, so I'll be on my way.
Was he even connected? Was he even a fan of WATP, or was it just somebody off the street? Or was he connected to who was that singer guy, the homeless singer? That guy probably wasn't on
No, he's not. He wasn't connected to him. He's connected to Drew Lane, who was extremely gracious. Drew Lane actually paid for the Golden Voice, Ted Williams, to
that's
be
how
part of the show. Okay. So, if Drew has a friend that wants to go back in the green room, then he earned it.
WATP.
That's right, Ted Williams.
There it is.
He's great.
So sticking with Brennan for a moment there, because I know you've talked about how, not that you think Kevin's a phony, but you have sort of said that, well, Kevin's beefs are like, if he likes you, it's pretend. He hates you, maybe it's pretend.
He is a phony. It's obvious. It's obvious. I mean, Melton has brought this up. I've brought this up. When you're friendly with him, you can do no wrong. And he compliments you. And he's like, oh, I was watching Carl. He does a great job. Blah, blah, blah. Said the same thing about Melton. And then as soon as he was angry with me, I can't do anything right. He was actually singing up for Samantha Bee. He's like, Carl's grooving on Samantha Bee. Samantha Bee had a television career. I'm like, yeah, so did Neil Brennan. You ever heard of him? He made millions in television. So what does that tell you, Katie?
But that's indicative of Brennan, because I think here's another theory
that is indicative of Brennan. It's a character flaw.
He's literally a character flaw. We all have those. I think his thing is the reason he hates a Shuli. I think the reason he sort of hates to be in the Dabbleverse. I think he likes now Bob Levy's gone and he can kind of wash himself, because I think he looks down on the Dabbleverse.
He just had Stuttering John on his show this week. What do you mean he wants to be out of the Dabbleverse?
Screw with Shuli, though. It's out of pure hatred. It's out of pure id. It's not really, I don't know if it's really content.
How does that screw with Shuli?
I think he just says, I've got the golden apple. I've got you're a fool. He's with me. Ha ha ha. Like he did with you when he tried to talk him out of going on. I think it's just pure troll. But I think the reason he hates a Shuli is because Brennan came up with real comics. You know what I mean? Say what you will about his career. He had credits and all that. Yeah, he's not a household name in terms of stand-up comics, but I think he views himself as he actually is a dues payer. And he seems to have, it's a combination of self-loathing, but he can't respect a guy like Shuli, who he sees has a following, does well on YouTube, gets those super chats. He just doesn't get it. He thinks I guess the public is stupid for supporting that guy.
Carlos Danger. I know you're a fan of Kevin Brennan.
It's a form of honesty, though.
If you dislike someone because they're successful, that makes you an asshole. That makes you a shitty person. And the fact that you're saying, well, he doesn't like Shuli because Shuli's doing well, is a character flaw once again. That's fucked up. If you go around hating people who aren't doing as well as you,
viewing though, it makes for a good. It's the essence of that podcast.
I'm over it. I don't know. It's kind of the same shit over and over again. It's getting old, in my opinion. How long can you do that for? I don't like Shuli. What did Shuli do to you? He was on a show and the guy gave out my number and I gave out his number the year before. So he actually had a good reason to give out my number and Shuli had nothing to do with it. I hate Shuli for that reason. Okay. So a made up reason that doesn't make any fucking sense. It's not logical at all. And you're going to hate on this guy forever. That's the shtick. Neat. You might notice that Shuli is taking the high road. Doesn't talk about Kevin at all. And Kevin talks.
But you guys have organized all these shows around him, right? There seems like there's a concerted effort. Like the new show you're doing on Fridays is at 4 p.m.
What is this conspiracy?
Well, is that all right? I'll great. I'm not. It's an assumption I have.
Yeah.
When Kevin Brennan does his show 19,000 times a week, it's always at 4 p.m. And now Shuli at one point was doing Uncle Rico twice. Wasn't that a big fu to Brennan?
For sure.
And are you in fact? That time slot at 4 p.m. on a Friday, is that a FU to Kevin Brennan?
It's not. The reason why we chose 4 p.m. on a Friday is because I reached out to Shuli with this idea. And I said, I want this to be a collaboration. I reached out to you, Carlos. I wanted to get everyone involved in this Dabble Point. And hopefully we will be able to get a lot more people involved in it. Today we have Phil Elmore again, but also Blind Mike Geary is going to come on. I'm going to ask Vinny Paulino if he wants to come on, and we'll see what he thinks. But
OJ,
anyway,
what is that laughter?
I'm actually offended that you would have a guy like Phil Elmore that you would ask to have on. Nonetheless, this is the
episode is taking a
second
turn.
time, and not ask Obnoxious John, someone that's been in the Dabbleverse longer than Shuli. I might
You're right.
add.
You're right.
And
I need to get OJ on the show.
I will
You're
not
right.
do the show. I will not.
Oh,
He's
I
so
will not.
Italian.
then what the
I-
fuck? Then what are you?
You're
I just
Sicilian.
wanted to point. I just wanted to point that out. That I'm very offended.
Well, OJ, I see you were always the behind the scenes guy, and now you have a filter and you're on the show, but I don't know you to be verbose. So I guess that's why I didn't reach out to you. I certainly would be happy to have you on the show, but I didn't know that you were the front and center guy now. Is that your role?
Well, I'm not the front and center guy, but I'm as you pointed out on your show, I've been on many shows. I'm sure you've heard me do other
course.
shows.
Of course, but Phil Elmore sits down for an hour and a half by himself and puts out an entire argument and does a very reasoned
good one.
approach. It's very different. Well, all right, if you say so. He's
didn't
got
hear
a
what you
lot of
said,
people
OJ.
listening to him now.
I think he's very articulate, and
yeah.
he's a lot more articulate than I am. I'll give him that, but I'm not a fan of his takes at all. I find them very boring.
Well, good. Isn't that a good thing? Don't you want people
No.
with different takes? No,
Yes, I do, but not boring ones. Not boring
All right.
ones.
I do have, you brought up Phil Elmore.
I'm a fan of Joey C. There you go. He's not articulate, but
No.
he's
Definitely
not boring either.
He's gonna be coming for you, Carl. El Harible sent me a message saying, I just can't watch Phil Elmore. We already have one super obese straight man, and his name is Carlos Danger.
That's very true.
I totally agree. I am jealous of Phil Elmore. But I'm saying, Carl, if you took on Phil in a flashlight fight, hand-to-hand combat, but you can have a flashlight as a weapon, would you take him, do you think?
No, definitely not. I don't have any martial arts training.
He's like, I'm all ninja, right? Isn't that what they're saying on Reddit? Would you go on MLC again, Carl? Would you?
Yes,
You go
yeah,
again?
definitely. Yeah, I'd actually, I want to talk to Kevin about all of this. I'm happy to let some time pass and everyone calm down. But no, I want to talk to him because the way everything went down was Kevin tried to fuck up my gig, which is a dick move in my opinion. And then I called him out for it. And then he immediately changed the story and acted like he didn't do that and went on his show for days afterwards going, Carl's all mad at me. All I did was watch a video. It's like, no, that's not what you did at all. And he just changed the story. And the
So I can't even
gaslighting thing, I have no
what
respect
exactly,
for.
What exactly was it? What is he saying he watched it? Was this when he
Okay.
told John not to go on?
So I posted a video on my YouTube channel that morning, goofing on John.
Oh, okay.
I do that most mornings. I do that a lot. It's my brand. It's my job. It's my living. And Kevin saw that, and then he has John on his show, and he goes, I don't know why you're doing a show with Carl. He's goofing on you, and now you guys are going to team up and do a show together, not getting the point that the whole idea of me versus John is to have a debate, to talk about these issues that we have with each other. Him trying to get my Patreon taken down and my YouTube taken down and all this shit. It wasn't for us to form a fucking team and be like, hey, let's watch the Shuli Network together and laugh at Shuli. That wasn't what this was at all. And Kevin not understanding that, yeah, the reason why I put that video out is to fuel this debate. I want John angry at me. I'm angry at him. Let's go. And Kevin comes on and goes, John, Carl's still goofing on you. I don't know why you're teaming up with him. Don't even do the show. Like, Kevin, you're missing the point. This is why I put this video out, is to get more people watching, to see what this debate's going to be.
You're going to hate that I say this, but I loved it because it made me want to watch you and John even more because it kind of
Yeah, but it almost didn't happen.
You were so angry. It was
I
great
was. It
radio.
almost didn't happen. John literally was driving to the pub after he left MLC, and I had to text him that he's a pussy in order for him to turn around and come and do the show. So
But it's really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's John's fault. Like the way that John could be manipulated and still is.
you're a weird Kevin Brennan apologist. You don't see anything that Kevin did wrong there?
No, I'm not. No, I'm saying Kevin's going to be Kevin. You know what I mean? Kevin's a loaded gun. You know what I mean? And he's like defective. So yeah, eventually.
How do you
gonna
feel about?
actually kill
Hold
yourself.
on, hold on, OJ. I got to ask this now. Hold your thought though. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
Carlos, Kevin's going to be Kevin. Who are you for, Hamas or Israel?
Oh, I don't even.
Hamas is going to be Hamas. What do you
When-
mean? That's what they
when he
do.
talks-
They murder people. What are you going to do? Hey, there's some torture involved. We drive children through the streets. Whatever. Wow.
Hey, I'm
You
a
can't
Mayor
just-
Koch guy. I'm a Mayor Ed Koch guy for life, New York City. But look,
Do you understand my argument, though?
that
You can't
shit
just say his shitty behavior is who he is, so it's great. No, it makes him a shitty person. Go ahead, OJ. You were going to say.
I was gonna just point out that you're calling Carlos a KB apologist. I would argue that maybe you're a Shuli apologist because a lot of the things that you've said about KB are in fact things Shuli has done. Recently, from what I understand, they're striking John, not cool. The gaslighting. I mean, Shuli gaslights his audience. He beats around the bush around a lot of things, topics that come up. The most recent was Patrick Melton. He kind of, ran away from that whole thing. I guess what I'm asking is, why do you not ever go after Shuli?
Well, Shuli and I have had our differences. We definitely did dig in. I don't know how long ago it was, a few months ago, but we've definitely had our differences before. But no, honestly, I like those guys over there. We've collaborated on things together. Obviously, we've done each other's shows. We had DabbleCon that we put together. And so I can work with those guys. They're reasonable. They do a good
Even
job.
While they're doing things that you are mad at Kevin about, they do the same things.
I'm mad at Kevin for trying to ruin my show with Stuttering John. Shuli has not done that to me.
But the show happened, and maybe I'm a Kevin apologist, right? All right, I'll take that. But the show happened, and it was great.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad it did.
It had a great run up. It was like, the fighters, the UFC guys. Conor McGregor is a total asshole before the fight actually happens. Nice hype, and then
no, I'm glad that the show ended up happening. It almost didn't, but I'm glad that it did. And yeah, I agree that I was a little more fired up than I would have been going into that show. Now,
I was afraid of you. You were
so
mad. Seriously. I was like, holy shit, I've never seen Carl this mad.
Don't be afraid of me. But also, you have to understand, the one thing that I do, except for today, is prepare for shows. Yeah. So I was sitting there.
For today.
I'm just fucking with you. So I was sitting there preparing for the show that I had with Stuttering John. And then I'm watching out of the corner of my eye, John on MLC, and going, yep, I'm not going to do the show. I'm like, what the fuck? I've been spending the last 4 hours putting this whole thing together, and now he's just going to bail on it. So, from your perspective, hey, it all worked out great. Don't be upset. But from my perspective,
I know I'm being a dickhead. I'm like, I like to watch the car wreck. That's part.
Sure, I understand.
Big part of the.
I understand. Yeah. I'm glad it all worked out. I'm glad it worked out the way that it did. But in Kevin's goal was to make it not work out. That was definitely it. And listen, like I said,
okay. So
I still like Kevin. Look at, I still got my good-natured ribbing thing over here Troy Smith made. I'm hoping that someday Kevin and I start our show together.
Yeah, I think you guys are great together. So I do hope you guys end up working together again in the future.
Me too.
I mean, I'd like to see it back on. And it does bum me out that Kevin alienates all these different fan bases by fighting with everybody. It does
not just fan bases, comedians.
Right, the actual people and their fans. Yeah,
we have comics come in to. I'm going to go see Dan Soder tonight. He's in Rochester this weekend. And Vinny Paulino gets to interview these guys for his show, Comedy at the Carlson Cast. So he sits down with all these comics that come in and does interview shows with them to promote their gigs. And he tells me, and they talk about it off air, every single one of them hates Kevin Brennan.
Wow.
Every single one of them. He's just pissed off.
Are they scared to do his show, or is like...
No, they just don't like him. They don't care about his show. These are guys who are much bigger than Kevin Brennan. Dan Soder, coming into town. Like there's a lot of guys who Kevin's pissed off, and they've left him in their dust. So I don't know that he's not helping himself with this attitude. I like him. He's a funny guy. Don't get me wrong.
I can't stop watching the show.
Getting his own way.
Be honest. Maybe
fine.
It's an Irish thing. Maybe I have 4 older brothers, and maybe it's something like that. I just
I tune in just to see how bad the guests have gotten.
I know.
So
I will. Can I? You texted me once. Can I talk about that? It was a. But I was on Brennan. You probably don't even remember this. I was on with Brennan, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is going slow." And I felt like, "Oh, Carl has my number." And his first text to me is like, "You're really shitting Rick here."
No, I texted you during the show and called you out.
You didn't. You basically said that the vibe was weird. You weren't specifically calling me out, but it was a late night stream where I had to. I was falling asleep, and I might have had a couple of beers.
It was like
in
a
me.
Saturday. It was like a late Saturday night kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't even know why I brought it up, but it was just the awkwardness of having the.
So I'm going back to our text. I'm going back to our text together.
No. Hey, I didn't give you permission to go through all of them. Don't show OJ that one.
Can I tell you what my first text to you was? I'm reading it right here.
Are you going to ruin my story?
Hold on. It says, Carlos, this is
why they call you the librarian.
Well, listen, you just made an accusation. My first text
Not
to
an
you was not.
accusation. It's not.
You
an
did. You go.
accusation.
Your first text to me was you suck on MLC. That's not what it is at all. This is what I wrote. I wrote, Carlos, this is Carl. Thanks so much for hopping on today. Let's collab more in the future. That was my first text to you.
All right. But the first time
kind of a different story.
The first time I was on MLC, I'll restate it. The first time I might have been exaggerating. The first time I was on MLC, or now maybe it wasn't the first time I was on MLC. The first time you had my number, I appeared on MLC, and you sent me a text saying it was kind of I kind of agreed with you. It was kind of a less than show.
You wrote to me.
I'm going to edit. This is why this is being taped in advance.
What?
I'll edit all this out.
No, you can't edit this out. What are you talking about? All right. Well, we won't talk anymore about our text.
Yeah, and I didn't mean it like an accusation, Carl. I really didn't. I apologize if you took it that way. But
everyone took it that way.
The origin of the beef with Chad Zumock, I wanted to touch upon. Again, sticking with MLC, and I apologize to keep doing that. I was watching like MLC during the pandemic, and so like Chad is my era of MLC, and then he had he broke away from Kevin for a while, and I even went and subscribed to Chad's Patreon at that point. And one thing that was going on during that whole time, whenever this was 2020 or whatever, he was obsessed with Chrissy Mayer. Like I only first heard of Chrissy Mayer and Frank Pellegrino through Chad Zumock. Mm-hmm. He would just it seemed obsessive to me. I almost was fascinated by how obsessed he was.
It was weird.
Then it was yeah. It was strange.
I went down and did Chrissy Mayer's content house in Orlando.
That was later. Yes.
That was later, but he was still obsessed with her. We did a show at the Orlando Improv, and we had to ban Chad from the building because he was threatening us and being a real weirdo about things.
So when you talk about how, because you started going after Chad, right? Mock Zumock became sort of a weekly segment for a while, I think. Steel Toe at this point, he went in there. So my theory is that you had talked about how Chad appeared on your show and had 2 bad appearances. And that's why you started sort of fucking with him, with these, or roasting him. And I think it wasn't really that. It was really because it had to be that Frank and Chrissy reached out to you and said, hey, this guy's obsessively talking about us. Can you help us out?
Oh gosh, no. There would never be a communication like that from Chrissy or Frank. They're not that way. But I saw what Chad was doing, and I saw how he was going after them hard. And listen, I'm friends with Chrissy and Frank. I went to their wedding. Chrissy has stayed over at my house over DabbleCon and stuff like that. Like, I'm pretty good friends with them. We've gone on vacation together and stuff. So when Chad's going as hard as he was going at them for what, and maybe I'm biased, for what seemed like no reason at all. Like they did nothing to him. It was just like this weird, venomous, not funny, just fucking with people thing that I was like, okay, I'm going to highlight this and talk about it. And people think that I had this whole plan that I'm like, all right, John's going away, so now Chad's the new John. I started goofing on Chad before John left his show. Yeah. So it wasn't a thing where it was just like, oh, I'll replace this lolcow with this lolcow. I was just watching what Chad was doing. Chad had been reaching out to me about various things, and I just got to the point where I'm like, oh, that's what it was. Now I'm thinking back to it. What really tipped the scale, so he's going after Chrissy, he's being a dick, he's not funny, and he was on my show twice and was terrible at it. And then when he said, I'm getting into the Stuttering John game, I'm going to be the next guy, everyone's making money goofing on Stuttering John, now I'm going to do it. I went, no, this is where I have to draw the line.
It was an offhand Chad remark, though. I don't think he had any real intent of like, I mean, he doesn't have the wherewithal. He's never done anything where I'm going to start this new show and my topic is going to be Stuttering John. But that rubbed you the wrong way because you thought he was grifting.
Why do you think that's true? Because he started Kumia's Cucks and he's done a lot of shows.
Kumia's Cucks is the one thing that.
Well, he also did the MLC,
and that was much later.
Stream.
That was later. Right, when you
Carlos,
talk about
you're an interesting guy. You seem to know people's intentions. Even if they say they're going to do something, you're like, yeah, but he wasn't going to do that. You like know what their real intentions are. How
he never did it. He never did it.
Yeah, because he got called the fuck out. Plus, John went away right after that. But no, I honestly think it was helpful that I called him the fuck out on it.
My accusation, and again, I'm just posing these questions. My accusation is that it wasn't really that he was terrible twice on your show. It's that you were coming to the defense of your friend, Chrissy Mayer, which is understandable.
Yeah, there were a number of issues that bubbled up at once, I guess.
And then, so what's the status now? I know you said a couple of weeks ago, and Chad ran with this, that you're not going to be talking about Chad because it got a little too personal. It got a little too weird. Is that
the reason why I stopped talking about Chad? Is because he did this thing. You know, we had the black eye incident, and I thought that was interesting. I did multiple shows about what a liar he is. He came up with the first story. I knew it was a lie immediately. Then he's like, all right, you got me. Here's what really happened. I knew that was a lie. That was ridiculous. So I was going after Chad for lying and all that kind of stuff. Then all of a sudden, he started doing this thing where he would tweet out a photo of like a gun shop. And
right.
Hey, I'm going to be at this place. And I just bought this gun. And there was another really big lie in there too. I forget what it was. And so I'm watching this and I'm seeing these tweets go out. I'm like, well, this is obviously bullshit. And then he got called out on a show not long after. He goes, well, yeah, no, I'm lying. I'm lying all the time. It's none of that's true. And I go, oh, well, then this is boring. What's the point of watching a guy who's a known liar? And it's fun to call out someone for lying. But now they go, yeah, everything I say is a lie. Like, well, then why am I listening to you? Who cares?
You listen to my lie. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah. Right. The joke's on me. You know what I mean? Like if Alex Jones came out and went, I don't believe any of this bullshit that I'm saying, he'd lose all credibility immediately. No one would listen to him. Like, oh, well, I'm listening because I think you believe it. I don't know if I believe it, but I think you do. But if Chad comes out and he's just like, yeah, I say I do this and I do that. I don't do any of it. You're like, oh, okay, well then I'm done with this. This is boring.
Gotcha. All right. Switching gears. All right. We're going to get off.
I agree with that 100%, by the way.
Thank you.
Agree
OJ.
with what? That
we found
that
some
Chad
common ground.
You agree with
common
what?
ground.
I know.
Everything he just said, his analogy
gotcha.
was perfect, spot on. It's exactly how I feel about Chad. Like, why?
Yeah,
It's a waste of
he
time.
he lost the thread. Like he was an interesting guy for a little while there, and he's standing by his crazy stories. And then as soon as just like, yeah, no, I'm just a liar. Like, neat.
I do.
Have fun with that.
After yesterday's show, I got to admit, I want to see him back on MLC, like maybe once a week, maybe twice a month.
Well, you know why he's good
There's
on
something
MLC?
between the two of them. There's something.
Yes,
there's some
he's good
chemistry
on
there.
MLC because Kevin just rips on him. He does not treat him like an equal at all. And Chad's just like, hey, it's me, Bob, and Kevin. We're the team. It's like all they're doing is goofing on you nonstop. I mean, I like it. I enjoyed that era of MLC quite a bit. So I'm with you on that.
You know, I was looking. This isn't a question I prepared, but it just came into my head. It's totally changing gears here. But I'm looking at Shuli, the Shuli Network numbers on their YouTube videos, and every video is like 8,000 views, 10,000 views, 8,000 views, 10,000 views. There might even be one in there that has like 20. So because I'm sort of not watching John as much as I used to, right? I'm just sort of whatever time and job stuff. But are we at peak Dabbleverse at this point? Are there more people watching Stuttering John than ever before? Because it looks like the Shuli Network, by those numbers, are as popular as they've ever been.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the case. I think Dabblers Anonymous is larger than it ever was before. People are watching these shows more so than they were before. There's more people talking about it, so there's more people into it. And people discover Stuttering John through different avenues now. And you could tell Stuttering John shows when he goes live have more people watching than ever before. He used to have 200 tops watching his live stream. Now he's getting 400, 500 people because they want to see it before all the shows that goof on him see it. I could tell you, looking at, because we did the first Dabble Point on my channel, it's got over 19,000 views.
Wow. And
So,
for
and
our
that's just a
world,
round table discussion. Now, don't get me wrong, Tukey's on there, so that's a pretty big pull
Tukey,
right there. But other than that,
the king of the Dabbleverse. I think Tukey's appeal is that he's not, there's so much drama and like Kevin Brennan versus Bob Levy, and then you have just like a puppet goofing out at all this. People need that. There's something comforting about that.
yeah, I think the potato filter, obviously Cardiff went a long way with that. And there is something about Tukey that's just disarming and fun, and it gets us all to just breathe a sigh of relief. Like, that's right. This is just comedy. We're all just having fun here.
Right. Yeah. How about, I was looking into your background a little bit, and you've probably been asked this before, but whatever, I'm going to ask it again. ebaum's World. Like, I remember that website from back in the day. I don't remember exactly what I saw on it. Maybe it was a beheading video or pornography. I don't even know. Did you have that? Was that kind of stuff on there?
I don't think so. No.
But how did you land that job? Because that was early on in the internet, it seems to me.
Yeah. Well, that was a dream come true. So ebaum's World was this site that was a little bit YouTube before YouTube, but it had other things. It had games on there. It had all sorts of different things. It's just an entertainment site. And I would go on there. I worked at the local newspaper in the what was called the new media department. I worked for their website in the early 2000s.
What newspaper, may I ask? Is it the Rochester?
The Democrat and Chronicle of Gannett newspaper.
The first, isn't that this is really geeky, but that's the first Gannett ever, isn't it? Their flagship or their.
It might be. I can't remember if it's Rochester. It was definitely out of New York State. Anyway, one of the very first Gannett papers. Yes. And so to pass time at work, I would go on ebaum's World, play games, watch videos, all that kind of stuff that everyone was doing. I had no idea it was local. It was just a website that everyone was going to. It was a very popular one. And then lo and behold, in my one of my business meetings, I'm sitting down across from ebaum. Wow. And we're having a meeting, and a few months goes by, and I was in advertising. He needed someone to help him with the advertising side of his business. He reaches out and says, "Hey, Karl, I could use someone to help me on the advertising side." And I was like, I couldn't wait to quit my job. I fucking hated working for Gannett. It sucked. Giant corporation.
I worked for Gannett.
Did you really? Which
as a
which
reporter?
Paper?
Yeah, I was at. They owned the Patent Trader, which was part of the Journal News in Westchester County.
Okay, yeah.
It was a family-owned weekly they bought. But anyway, yeah,
so you were part of the guild.
If you were guild meaning, well, I wasn't in a union.
Oh, you weren't. Okay.
No.
Because when we're at the DNC, it was very separated from the reporters and the rest of the marketing and advertising.
Oh yeah, no,
classifieds and everything was very separate.
I think that's why I instantly hated you, because I was like, oh, this guy's a newspaper sales guy, because that's how I was brought up. You have to hate the sales guys and marketing guys, but
right. So so I got to work
you were director of advertising for ebaum's?
Yes, director of advertising at ebaum's World, and so that was one of these jobs where if you could picture what it was like to be in, the early internet boom. And this was the second boom. This wasn't the 90s.
It wasn't pets.com, but it was.
Right.
Yeah.
But everything that you would expect it to be, we're making money hand over fist. We have a whole game room in the basement. Every lunch break I spent playing darts with my buddy, or we were playing Mortal Kombat on the big consoles. We had the shuffleboard table, like all the crazy shit down there. So it was just a blast. I loved going into work. I had a dream job for a little while, and it was a lot of fun.
Now they got bought at some point for like multi-million-dollar deal, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. This handheld entertainment out of San Francisco. We went out there a few times, had meetings with them, and it was actually Carl Page, Larry Page's brother, who was one of the investors and part of the executive team of Handheld that acquired us for, I think, $17.5 million at the time.
And then it sort of changed the whole culture of the thing. How did you end there?
Yeah. So after that happened, a guy who I used to have contact with when I worked at the newspaper reached out. He's at an agency, and he goes, "Karl, I need someone to help me with the digital marketing at the agency that I work at." And I was like, okay, I see the writing on the wall here. Sounds good. I left. 2 months later, everyone I worked with got fired.
Which is the way. It's crazy to me, Rochester, though. And one of the things I like going to DabbleCon was I never realized, I started listening to you. I assumed you were an X-radio guy. I assumed you were like a morning DJ somewhere, and your whole crew was like that.
Wow.
But I did.
I appreciate that. That's a compliment. Wow.
That was my assumption. But I like the fact that you're a bunch of like local guys who got together and did this. And I guess there is something about Rochester, as John calls it the armpit of New York, but there's something going on up there.
He's thinking of Syracuse as the armpit of New York. Rochester. It is interesting how this has become in a weird way, somehow the center of the Dabbleverse geographically.
Yeah.
Even though the Dabbleverse has no center, it's just the internet. But geographically, DabbleCon was here, and then Stuttering John's live show is coming up in March. And it just seems like a lot of things happen here for some reason.
And then that live show in March, I wanted to ask you about. What do you have any involvement? I know that show is Sunday, and you've been like banned from. I don't even know if you can be in Rochester on Sunday, but Friday, Saturday, are you involved in anything?
Yeah. So Saturday they're doing Cardiff and Vinny, and Vinny's at my front door and it's locked, so I got to go run. But
shit.
Yeah, sorry. I'm doing a creep off bonus at noon today, which is in 10 minutes. So I'm doing the subreddit surfing. They're doing a live episode of that Saturday night. I think I'm supposed to be on with them for that, but I also have to do my consequence for that, which is where Cardiff writes my stand-up set.
Okay. So that's happening.
So that's going to happen. And also, if people are coming in from out of town, I know people have already gotten their tickets and stuff, then we'll meet up with people. We'll do something Saturday night and hang out.
That was another nice thing about DabbleCon. You could buy VIPs, and that was great. But you guys, everyone was just mixing in with the crowd. One last question before you go. I got to ask this. Nobody Likes Onions yesterday was talking about, he was playing clips from Steel Toe. Steel Toe was talking about how if he doesn't want to do the daily goal anymore. So he's going to give himself 1 year. And if he still has to do the daily goal in a year, he's going to walk away.
Oh, really?
What he was. Well, Steel Toe sometimes will say something, and then the next day you don't know if he was just, you know what I mean? But that's what I heard on Patrick Melton's broadcast. And I'm wondering, where do you see Steel Toe in a year? And do you have any advice in terms of revenue for that show? So
I don't really follow what Aaron's up to anymore. He took himself out of the Dabbleverse, and I have enough going on that I haven't been paying attention. I told him the very first time I ever talked to him, he had me on his show, would do an interview. And I told him, I go, what you're doing wrong here is you're starting with infrastructure and then trying to get the revenue to justify it. You got to start with no infrastructure. And then as the revenue comes in, you can start to build it, similar to how Shuli did it with the Shuli Network, or even how I've done it with Who Are These Podcasts. And I guess to some degree he's done that, because it sounds like from the clip I saw yesterday, it's just him and April are the only people on the payroll now. Because he used to have,
100% sure, but yeah,
they have one other guy that comes on, I think, once a week, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like he's thinned out the overhead a little bit, really. And he's a hustler. He'll figure it out. He'll keep making money, but he's got to strip this way down. This whole idea that in order to make a living, this is what's crazy to me, because I always thought show business is awesome. You get overpaid and you work way less. That's the great thing about show business. And these people are doing it wrong. Like even Shuli and those guys, they're on all morning and then they're on all evening. And Steel Toe is like doing 5 shows a day or whatever. This is just like, guys, value your time more. Do one great show. I mean, I used to do once a week with WATP. We moved to twice a week, but I'm not going to start doing a daily show. It's just like, why are we working so hard? That's why I got out of working a 9 to 5.
Burnout's a thing. All right. One last question. I lied. Worst guest in the history of WATP, and why is it AJ Benza?
AJ Benza was pretty terrible. He did not understand the format at all. He felt like he had to make noise every fucking second. Even when we brought Anthony Cumia on, he recognized like, yeah, no, we got a show going on right here. He's still just nonstop, just interjecting, talking. I'm like, okay, he didn't get it. But Chad was still the worst guest.
And Gino Pascante, the Gino Pascante, Alex Stein combination. I love Alex Stein, but Gino would not shut up during that episode.
Yeah, I know. Everyone was all fired up. We were down at Chrissy's wedding, and I just tried to set up my studio.
Gotcha.
I set up my studio impromptu. We had no internet, so I was having a hard time showing video to people. It was the whole thing was a clusterfuck. I tried to make something happen because I'm like, let's go. Well, Anthony's supposed to be on the show that day too, but he didn't get into town in time. But yeah, that was like, I'm down there with all these creators, all these comedians. I should definitely do something with this, and maybe I shouldn't have. It was funny because I remember Alex Stein at one point. He had a weird thing going on. But anyway, Alex Stein, who I love, he goes, I'm not good at these like reaction shows. You play a clip and then you react to it. I'm like, well, you don't have to react to every fucking clip then, Alex. like he was talking the whole fucking time. That's where he's just like, I'm not good at this. Like, okay, well, I'm here. Gino's here. We had Missy B. Like, you don't have to. We got other people to discuss this. But anyway.
That's great.
I'm so sorry. Right. I really have to go.
Yeah, you got to go.
Sitting outside my house.
Let him in. I said it would be a half hour. It ended up being almost an hour. So please, everybody, you know who Karl is. Whoarethese.com. Check him out on Twitter. Karl, thank you so much for coming on.
Guys, thank you. I love you both.
Hey, love you, Karl.
Love you too.
All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Peace.
Yep.